Welcome back to the Background Screening Collective, a podcast that dives into the latest trends, challenges, and opportunities facing our industry today, always with a focus on what matters most to you. I'm really excited about this episode. Today, we're going to talk about a topic that is on everyone's minds. You guessed it, it's artificial intelligence. Stay tuned for a really engaging conversation. We are so excited to have Wade Hudson here today. I have actually known Wade since we were at a little company called SJV. I'm not even sure if he remembers this, but he was my manager when we were East Coast, West Coast. You were my manager over New Jersey.
New Jersey.
That's
right.
Yes, that's how long it's been since I've known Wade. So Wade was the director of operations at Informed Data, which, like I said, was formerly SJV and Associates. He was a member of the Marine Corps, so he brings that leadership with him in the operations field. His leadership philosophy is always grounded in two key principles: modeling the way and then enabling others to act. That is a motto that I've heard from some of the best leaders in this industry and other industries, but it's a pretty great philosophy. We are really excited to have him here today to talk about AI and then to relate that to his experience in research and as a leader in the data industry. So, Wade, thank you so much for being here today.
Absolutely glad to be here. It's an exciting opportunity. So looking forward to the discussion.
Well, you had front row seats to major operational shifts in large organizations, right? That's kind of been your big groundwork from the beginning. So, without going into much specifics, what kinds of changes are companies like yours facing today? And how does AI fit into all that landscape of those changes?
Right. Well, throughout my tenure at SJV and then later at Informed Data, some of the biggest challenges that we faced were with scaling the organization. And then, kind of on the other side of that, dealing with price compression. And I think all of us, if you've been around in the industry for a while, you've seen prices come down, not up. And so, as that happens, your customers are still expecting you to operate at the same level, if not better, right? They want faster turnaround time, more consistent quality, lower prices. And from a business perspective, it makes it more challenging to operate and stay profitable. But I think that's where AI is a great solution. It addresses a lot of those challenges. It addresses the speed, it addresses the accuracy. It can certainly address the costs as well. And with that, I think the organizations that are looking at this type of technology, not just in the background screening space, but across other industries as well, the ones that are most successful are the ones that are focused on building the right leadership and building the right digital readiness. They're evaluating their leadership culture. Are they supportive of adopting new technologies? Are they developing their employees to ready them for this sort of transformation? And then on the digital side, are they evaluating their data? Are they evaluating their processes? Are they evaluating their tech stack, again, to implement this type of solution? And the ones that do that the best, I think, are ultimately going to be the most successful at this game.
What a relevant topic, because honestly, that continues on. And I've only been in the industry for like 3.5 years.
Yeah.
Clients want lower prices every single
Every day.
year, every day, every interaction, with inflation going the complete opposite way, which means cost of employment is higher, cost of having an office is higher, really cost of everything is higher, and yet our prices keep going lower. So I say that's extremely relevant topic for anyone in this industry.
Right. You probably want to spend more time working with your team, interacting with customers, maybe interacting with vendor partners, as opposed to having your head buried in spreadsheets and PowerPoint presentations. That's stuff that AI can now handle. And so it frees up not only you, but your teams to focus on more important tasks.
Absolutely. And even simple stuff like creating an SOP. Before, it would take me maybe a couple of hours. Now we're talking about 15, 20 minutes, or even less than that, if you can create a bot within ChatGPT to know your style. And so it's really exciting. I love AI. It's been a lifesaver for me in my personal life too. I don't know about you guys, but I've been
Yeah,
like, make me a shopping list for this week for my groceries, and then plan my meals for two picky toddlers. I actually put that in there, like a vegetarian and a
absolutely.
meat eater, and it does it. It's amazing. So I don't know how I could live without that. It just really scares me about the writing though, and from a marketing perspective and a sales perspective, I'm like, I don't want a robot to write for me. Like, I want my brain, and I still want to communicate with my clients. I don't
Well,
know.
and
I'm a little more
that's what's great
hesitant.
about it. You can pick and choose the tasks that you give to it, and you can focus on the things you want to do.
That's true. If it could fold my laundry,
I know, right?
I'm excited that everyone's excited about this topic. And I'm glad I'm an operations minded person. That's my field as well. And I'm glad you talked about focusing on leaders because having your team empowered with the right critical thinking and healthy skepticism, but also that innovative mind will allow them to really adopt these technologies because we are moving away from having to break everything down step by step. But like if I have to do that for you, then AI is kind of there ready to just handle
Absolutely.
it. So building up that leadership and kind of the next level for your team is going to help you absorb shocks, but also adopt those new technologies.
Yeah. And it starts with the leaders, setting the tone for the rest of your team, being supportive and creating an environment where they're encouraged to use the technology safely, of course, right? You want to give them some guardrails to operate in, but it starts with the leaders and they set the tone for the rest of the organization.
On guardrails, since we brought that up, let's talk about that a little bit. You know, in our industry with PII and so much that we have to keep private, like what are the key guardrails that you'd say must exist for our industry to stay safe within the AI space?
Sure. Well, you certainly want to have some conversations with your compliance team. You want to understand your data set. You don't want to, you want to be cautious with what you're exposing to the various tools that are out there, especially if you're implementing a solution that's externally facing. If you're exposing it to customers, there's also a higher level of risk. You're going to want to have conversations with your IT security team in terms of how they're going to be protecting your data with that type of solution. But there are certainly risks with it. It's a powerful tool, but you want to have those conversations up front, particularly as you look to implement this type of solution.
And you know, the most basic would be right. Don't put any PII in there,
Right, right. Now,
which
the
is so
great thing
basic.
with a lot of these tools is you can give it a certain set of parameters to operate in. You can tell it what's inbounds and in play and what's out of bounds. You certainly want to test it, of course. But whether you're working with a tool that's generative AI like a chat GPT or something like that, there are ways that you can give it a persona, you can give it a knowledge base that it's safe to operate within. And then you can also dictate to it what's, like I said, what's out of bounds. Same thing with agentic AI. So more in automating an entire workflow, you can give it guardrails and you only need to stay in this lane. You can give it a persona. You can do a lot of different things to kind of protect yourself in your business and your data.
It's exciting. So, do you think that, like, would you say ChatGPT though is like the main thing, like the immediate tangible impact on the day-to-day operations?
Well, like I said, there's several flavors out there. There's Claude, there's Gemini, there's some others, but that type of AI, generative AI, is probably the easiest to get started for someone with no experience using AI. I mean, think of it more of a personal assistant or someone that you're maybe texting with, right? You can have an open conversation. It does natural language processing, so you can just talk to it like a friend or a coworker, and it will understand, generally speaking, what you're asking for. And if it gets it wrong, you can go back and say, no, 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 this is what I was asking. And so you have some opportunities to course correct along the way, but it's generally pretty easy to get started. And for a tool like ChatGPT, it's one that I'm maybe a bit more familiar with. There's tons of available content online that you can use to help get you started. Anything from YouTube videos. I've been doing a bunch of courses on Coursera, which has a lot of great content on there. A lot of these platforms too, they offer free trial versions or low cost options as well to get you started relatively inexpensively. And so that's, what I would advocate for.
I've been learning a lot on LinkedIn, following people that share their prompts, because I didn't realize how detailed you could get, because you just said like you could say BSC OO and do this. So this week prepping for this, I've been like trying different things on ChatGPT, and I just thought it was so cool. And I made up all these crazy things. Pretend you were this person and you studied this course at this university, and this was the textbook, and it was so cool. Like I was like in awe of it, in awe and scared.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Wade, you've worked in this industry a really long time, which we have established. What is one core operational principle that just hasn't changed, and no matter how much tech evolves, and you don't see it changing in the future?
Well, for me, and this maybe isn't just an operational principle, but it's in my mind more of a leadership principle, and that's taking ownership. Particularly as a leader, you've got to own everything in your space, the good, the bad, the ugly, and you've got to embrace it. And I think by taking a high level of ownership, I think it does a couple things, not only for you, but for your team and the rest of the organization. I think it sets a tone of one, accountability, and it starts to build a strong sense of trust across the organization. And through that, you start to develop a high performing team. Everyone's accountable. Everyone owns the successes as well as the mistakes. And especially when someone owns a mistake, they're going to make the effort to make the correction and fix whatever that mistake was.
I would say only if the accountability is there, though, because
Yes,
people can own their
absolutely.
mistakes and never learn from them, and that could just be a cycle of constant. I'm sorry, I'm going to do better, and no actions come from that. And now a big learning we've had in our company, growth mindset's the first one. You have to be open. You have to be able to get out of your comfort zone all the time, because the phase of each company evolves. You got to be able to keep up with it, whether it's AI, right? Implementing new AI tools or different things. If you don't have a team that's excited about improving, it's like you just stall, right? So that's like a big thing.
Usually if you come into any situation and you take the stance that you know it all already, you're probably not going to last very long. You're just not. Or you're going
The
to learn the
ego.
hard way very quickly. So
Absolutely. That ego can really hold you back from really anything.
that's right. That's right.
It's so interesting.
There's a story in the media relatively recently. As I was preparing for the podcast, I was doing a bit of research, and Air Canada released an AI chatbot recently, and it was customer facing. So they had customers interacting with it regularly, and it ended up honoring, bottom dollar pricing. And so Air Canada was trying to go back and say, hey, we can't honor that price. I'm sorry, here's the actual price of the flight that you're trying to book. And it ultimately went to court, and the court said, no, 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 no. If you're going to put it out there for your customers to interact with, you've got to be accountable for it and you've got to own it. And so they actually had to honor the pricing. And so that was one way of learning the hard way, and learning that you do have to own it. Everything in your space, you've got to own it.
Absolutely. And implementing anything new is
Right.
There's going to be that learning curve whatever, which way you look at it, for sure.
So how do you build in that operational readiness then? Because we're talking about the learning curve and growth mindset. So there's someone who wants to adopt it or maybe doesn't, but they kind of have to jump on board because it's everywhere. How do you build in that readiness for the long term?
Well, like I said earlier, it generally starts at the top with the leadership. They've got to have the willingness to want to adopt the technology, and they've got to be able to set a clear vision for the rest of the team, the rest of the organization to follow. But on top of that, they've got to do a few things. They've got to evaluate the readiness of the organization. And what I mean by that is they've got to look at their data set. Is their data clean enough? Is it going to prevent some data biases that may be deeply embedded in your data? There's tons of news articles out there about that. They've got to evaluate their processes. Have they already done a good job of eliminating some of the waste because sometimes implementing these types of solutions can actually amplify problems and not solve them. So you want to do a good job of evaluating your current processes, but probably most importantly, you want to evaluate the readiness of your employees.
The benefits is the key, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's the thing. Like, how is it going to improve your life at work? You still have to feed information to it. You still have to train it and think for itself. And that requires people involvement, right?
Absolutely.
I think a lot of what it will remove, and that's just my perspective of it, is inefficiencies. So,
Mhm.
and people that are unable to adapt to it, like those will eventually become obsolete as well, which I guess can be scary for a lot of people.
Well, and the other opportunity that you can share with your teams is that it allows you as a leader to upskill your workforce, right? And so just like you were talking about earlier with that growth mindset, I know we hired you to do document intake or some data processing, but by implementing this type of solution, we're going to be able to train you on more important things, and that's going to allow you to improve your skill set, offer more value to the company. And so I think if you can connect those messages with your employees, you're going to be more successful in the long run, especially if you can show them that success. It's one thing to talk about it, but when you go to implement these solutions, ideally you're creating an environment where you're piloting the program first and they can experience and see those benefits firsthand. They're going to be less hesitant with adoption at that point.
When
The
AI was
leadership
first,
piece of it, right?
yeah.
Sorry, Megan, I don't mean to cut you off, but
No,
it's just
no.
is the leadership piece. Like, you have to go first as a leader, and then you have to make everybody feel okay about it and train them to, and then welcome them into this new space of mistakes and learning.
Mm-hmm.
And it's it's not for the weak, that's for sure.
Right, right. It takes a lot of
Yeah.
effort. I mean, change management is one of the biggest challenges any organization faces because people are accustomed to the way they've always done things. And so when you go in to try and, blow things up, so to speak, and completely transform the way they do business, there's a lot of hesitation with that. Is my job still safe? Am I still going to be able to offer the same value to the company or the team? So you've got to be very thoughtful in how you approach it with your team. And the more that you can get them involved, I think the easier it will be for them to adopt it. And like I said earlier, as soon as they start to see those benefits, they can start to socialize those successes across the organization because that type of news travels fast. Hey, look what I got to play with. It freed up my day. Look at how cool this thing was. You guys should, start playing around with it too. You'd rather have that than the hesitation. Oh, we're implementing the solution. They've kept me in the dark and now I might not have a job tomorrow. Right.
Totally.
Yeah, so mine, I'm more excited about the sales and marketing stuff related to AI. But when it was presented to me as something that I needed to start integrating into my sales career, I was very nervous. But my boss had said, okay, use this as a tool. This is a new tool. The best sales execs are using this. It's, instead of a notebook and a pen or a traditional computer, this is the new tool to help you do your job better and make more money. Let's be honest. That's what we want AI to do. So I looked at it like that. And then he told me, he's like, all of the best sales execs who you're going to be competing against in the future are going to be proficient in this type of AI. They're going to be able to sell utilizing this tool because this tool, it's not going to make you a better sales exec. It's going to make you more limber, more flexible. You can do like 20 things at once because you can automate that email. You can automate that marketing flow. So when I was able, because I was definitely a skeptic, Izzy seems much more on board with AI than I am. I was very hesitant.
I wanted to jump right in. I'm like, let's go.
I was like, no, our kids are not going to be able to read and write. And like, I love my ability to write. That scared me. But looking at it as a tool to help make me more efficient and kind of optimize my workflow, that definitely, it changed my mindset. I still think kids should not use AI with but besides that, I think we can handle it in business. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you can remind yourself that you're still the one in control, I think that's a good way to look at it, right?
yeah.
So in marketing, for example, if you're talking with AI, you can give it that persona. You're a marketing expert. I'd like some assistance with doing some research on a marketing campaign. I'd like you to research maybe some of our potential customers or research the industry. And just by having it help you with the research side of it will save you probably a
So much.
tremendous amount of time, I would imagine. And you can
Yeah.
focus on creating the topic and writing the newsletter or the campaign or whatever it is that you want to focus on. So
Yeah.
again, going back to what I said earlier, you're still in the driver's seat for sure.
Yeah. The driver's
How do
seat
you
is just a little
handle
bit
it?
easier.
So
Sorry,
much
Robin.
easier.
No, it's all right. I was curious because you said using it for research. How do you handle it when it hallucinates or gives you false information?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's why, as I mentioned earlier, AI isn't at the point yet where it's going to replace humans. And you're pointing that out right now. You've still got to review the work that it's producing for you. And there's a couple ways that you can do that. In Chat GPT, like I said earlier, you can tap into the knowledge base and give it specific documents you want to reference. That will not eliminate, but reduce the likelihood of those hallucinations that you're talking about. Another way that you can do it is you can ask for citations. I think some of the earlier models weren't able to provide citations, but now it can definitely provide citations. And so if you're doing something like research, you can, in your prompt, include that you expect with whatever you're working on to provide the citations or the URLs where you found the information. And that way you can go in and double check and vet that information yourself. It's
Totally.
not going to be perfect, and you're exactly right. You've got to go back and just double check, cross your T's and dot your I's. It'll save you the time, but you still got to do your due diligence as well.
Because in the end, it's searching the web, right? And the web has anything and everything in there, where there's real or not real. And that, I think that's the basis of like the whole thing and how you can tweak it to make it even better. Asking for where they get it from, the references are key too, because it's easier for you to check that way and make sure you just didn't use something from
That's
Google
right.
that doesn't make any sense, or Reddit. But that's, it's so incredible how it's evolving
Yeah. Yeah.
so much.
And going back to one of the topic points we talked about earlier or mentioned, prompting. Learning how to prompt will help with this. And there's tons of techniques out there, but including some of those aspects in your prompt, provide citations, notate where you found this, will help with some of that due diligence.
True. So key.
Crazy. So it actually knows
So
like that's a nonsense site. That's an opinion site where like these aren't facts. Like AI has been trained to evaluate the credibility of a source, kind
Uh,
of.
I, I don't know about that. I would just
we're all
say
like, we
that,
don't know. Like, no, probably not.
it's I'm not entirely sure how the algorithm works, but it's probably going to go with, if it's searching the web, for example, it's going to look at websites that rank higher in visibility. You can also tell it to go to specific websites, search the PBSA website for such and such. And those are
Yeah, I love
some,
that. You can send it to specific places to
right,
search. In the end, you always have to tell it to it, right? What you want to create, or at least the idea. And then the more it comes out with some stuff and you tweak it, the more it knows what you sound like, or
right.
how you speak and how you say things. And I love that because it just can speed things up so
Yeah.
much.
One of the new features, at least on ChatGPT, is they've increased its memory to remember all the chats that you've had with it. And that's a recent change within the last, I don't know, week or so. So to your point, it's going to remember everything that you've talked about. It's going to start to learn who you are as a person or an operator. And when you're looking at some of the more custom GPTs, which we can talk about if you'd like, you can update the knowledge base. In fact, I have one that I use for job interviews and things like that. It's a career coach GPT that I built, and I updated it with personality assessments, resume, my leadership philosophy. And so now it really knows who I am as a person and as a leader. It knows about my experience and about my accomplishments. And to the point that was brought up, it starts to reduce some of the hallucinations, because oftentimes I would be asking it about certain jobs and it would it would hallucinate something. It would say, oh, let's talk about your 15 years of Salesforce experience. I'm like, I've never used Salesforce. It hallucinated that. So updating the knowledge base will help reduce that.
Oh yeah.
Are you scared at all, Wade? Like, I don't know. I haven't really taught it who I am. I pretend to be different people when I interact with it because I'm so scared for it to be like, you, Robin Schaefer, live at this place. You know, I don't know.
Robin is the one that says, thank you so much for this ChatGPT.
I do.
Appreciate
it. If they rule the world,
just in case,
I'm on the good side.
You start to picture Skynet from Terminator and the AI bots taking over.
That's
right?
how she treats it.
Yeah. No, I get it. And I think that's a good thing to approach it with some skepticism and some caution. For me, I'm willing to embrace it. I'm not putting anything crazy out there. And I mean, quite frankly, I don't really have anything to hide either. Maybe there's some people out there that would advocate not putting your PII out there and things like that. But, so far I haven't had any issues with it. So, maybe it's one of those things I need to learn the hard way, but I'm comfortable with it. And that's the great thing. Like I said earlier, you're in the driver's seat. So if you don't want to put it out there, don't put it out there.
Yeah. Megan, I know you're kind of a skeptic like me.
Yeah, no, so you talk about the intersection of tech and people. So how do you see AI changing the role of human decision making in operations? I mean, are we going to give AI the ability to make decisions for operations, or like, where do we draw the line?
To a certain extent, and like we've alluded to in some of the conversation earlier, I think AI will elevate humans and not eliminate them. Right. So it's going to elevate your ability to operate and not eliminate your ability to operate. There are tools out there currently that are actively making decisions in your day-to-day operations by using AI. That said, you are still in control. You still write, for example, agentic AI. It's a tool that uses AI to automate various workflows, and you can make them extremely complex. You can plug it into all the technologies that you all are already familiar with: Jira, Zendesk, HubSpot, the Google Office Suite, Microsoft Office Suite, and you can plug and play into all of those things. And one of the benefits of agentic AI is you give the tool agency to make some of the decisions for you. If this happens, I need you to take the following steps. But that's just it. You're giving it the guardrails in which it can operate and make decisions. So to answer your question, yes, AI still and will have the ability to make some decisions for you, but you have the ability to control that. It's not going to take over the world just yet.
So I got a request to.
It is improving at an exponential rate. So
yes,
maybe one day.
I got like a side hustle job offer one time to train AI, and it would just ask you these questions, and you'd have to just like write the answers, and I would do it. Like I did the training just because I wanted to see what the heck it was all about. And you would sit there like I was watching TV and just kind of typing. I'm like, well, if that is the level of attention that people are giving training AI, then we're all kind of screwed. But I'm hoping that people who are doing it actually take it a little more seriously than I did. It's just scary though. I don't know.
Well, I think if you're optimizing a process, like you kind of have to, right? Like, and then it will be starting with creating the SOP, then putting the SOP in there, giving it guardrails to be able to do what you want. That's kind of the direction we're going with it too. Right now, we just use basic writing tools, marketing assistance, and different basic tasks. But really looking this year and optimizing our processes, and I'm so excited about that, and everyone here is excited about it too. So we have a team that's super excited about technology, and it gets me even more excited about it. But being able to implement it in processes, that's life. That's better life.
It's pretty powerful, and your ability to customize it makes it super adaptable, super flexible, super versatile, and you're really just limited by your creativity at that point. in terms of how you can use it.
Before the lightning round, we haven't touched the thing that we're seeing on LinkedIn a lot, which is these posts that say for every image generated, X amount of gallons of water.
Yes.
So, viability. When I use these tools, I try really hard to be mindful that in one moment it could now cost $500 a month, or in one moment it could go away because its data center caught on fire in Arizona because whatever, we have a historic drought. We have so many unprecedented events these days. Again, me doom reminded. I'm always wondering what's the environmental impact, and I don't expect you to know the answer to that, but how do we balance AI adoption with sustainability? What practical steps can we take
that's
to be more
a
responsible?
really good question, and one that I'm not very familiar with. That said, I kind of liken it to automation a bit, where at least the affordability side is staying relatively low. In fact, it's becoming even more affordable. You're talking fractions of a cent per transaction, right? So each time you ask it a question or ask to generate an image, the costs are really low. As far as the environmental impact, that I'm not sure. I've read some of those articles, and I know that they're building a number of data centers across not only the US, but across the globe, and I've heard the topic of, going nuclear powered and some of these to make it more sustainable and cleaner. You can get into either side of that argument, but I know that it's a concern. And I think that concern is reaching the highest levels of government. They're talking about it fairly regularly. You occasionally hear about it in some of the press conferences and things like that. So it's certainly becoming a more important issue. And, I kind of look to the leadership of not only our country, but other countries across the world to start looking at this and talking about it and coming up with some solutions for it.
Yeah.
And that could be a challenge depending which leadership is in power or where, right?
I will say this. I would trust a benevolent AI to run government over a human, because us humans have power and ego at our core.
Sure.
That and that self-interest.
There was something on the news the other day, and it was talking about this lawyer that was using an AI avatar to represent themselves in a case. And I guess the person had some sort of medical condition with their throat, and they were having trouble communicating. And so they at least tried to bring in this AI avatar to present the facts of the case, et cetera. And the judge kind of called him out, and the news anchors started talking about, I would probably trust AI, at least in the sense of a judge, more so than a human judge, right? Because the AI starts to take some of that bias out, some of that human.
There's no emotions, right?
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And I thought it was an interesting discussion. So I think you're onto something there, Robin. They're maybe more neutral minded, but at the end of the day, it also probably depends on who trained the AI, right?
That was going to be exactly what I was going to say. It all depends on where it's learning from and who's training it and what kind of information you're putting in it. And that's the scary part, I think, for me. The only scary part is we are still controlling this, and it's still learning from us. And then it comes with all the people things, if you will. But looking ahead, what's one of the trend in AIs or ops you're paying close attention to? Something you think more people should be talking about right now, not the past, but things that might not be in people's minds currently.
Well, we were just talking about it, and that is agentic AI. And I believe you're going to have to fact check me on some of these numbers, but I believe in 2023, the market for agentic AI was $0. And in 2024, it was over $1 billion. So the technology is exploding. Everyone's trying to leverage it. And it's because it's such a powerful and diverse tool. Like I said, a lot of these agentic tools come out of the box with pre-integrated solutions, the technologies that you're already familiar with. It's very much plug and play. And a lot of these platforms are low code, no code. So you don't have to have coding experience to be able to leverage these tools. And like I said early on in the podcast, many of them offer free trials or low cost trials that you can sign up for and start to use them. The ones that I've started using more recently are Zapier and N8N. And I think both offer a 2-week free trial that you can start to, play around with. If you're going to implement it in a business, you're going to want to make sure that you've set clear objectives for yourself. You're going to want to pilot it on a small business case and then make it iterative, right? You're going to start it with a small team. You're going to see how it operates. Did you get the expected outcomes that you were wanting? You're going to want to interview that team that's interacting with it, hopefully get some feedback, and then take that feedback to make improvements, and then expand it, and then expand it, and expand it. And that's certainly a safer way to do it. But on top of that, you've got to be testing the entire time.
Every step of the way.
I think as many of us have probably learned one way or another, like we saw with early automation tools, particularly in the background screening industry, if you make a mistake in an automation tool that's touching tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of orders, it can go sideways very quickly. And so for that, I would stress the importance of putting a robust testing plan. And quite frankly, you can talk to ChatGPT and say, hey, help me put together a testing plan for this technical solution, and it will help you with that.
Lightning round time. So we like to ask a series of just really quick questions. Don't think about it too hard. You don't have to explain it too long. Just tell us what's in your mind. So one is, what's one practical AI tip or tool you'd recommend that someone could start using today to boost productivity or simply simplify their daily work routine?
Well, I know we've touched on it a lot. Generative AI. ChatGPT is my flavor of choice. I use it every single day, to help create content, to help prepare for podcasts, or maybe an exam at school as I'm taking courses. It's a complete time saver and a game changer for me. I use it every day.
What's one piece of tech, not AI, you can't live without?
Well, I feel like most people would probably say smartphone. But I'm actually going to go in a different direction. I'm going to go with Bluetooth. For me, if I can turn on my Bluetooth and put my earbuds in or put on a Bluetooth speaker, especially if I'm in a bad mood, turning on my favorite song and just listening to it can completely change the mood. And so for me, it's Bluetooth. That's my go-to.
Okay. Going back to early 2000s, late 90s.
That's right.
The most unexpected lesson you've learned from managing teams?
For me, I think there's one thing that I took from the Marine Corps, among many, that I've really thrived on throughout my leadership career, and that's adaptability. Leadership is not a one-size-fits-all approach. You're going to interact with people with different backgrounds. You're going to interact with customers that have different goals and objectives, and same thing with vendor partners. And so you've really got to be nimble and adaptable. You've got to meet people where they're at. You've got to understand what their motivations are, their goals are, what their strengths and weaknesses are. And I think by being adaptable is ultimately going to allow you to be more successful as a leader.
Isn't that the truth? What's one operational change you made that's the biggest impact in turnaround times or accuracy? And in our world of background checks.
Sure. So several years ago, SJV was going through a period of tremendous growth. And so we implemented a proprietary tool that we called the Rules Engine. And it essentially helped us automate a lot of our data processing. And so it followed a series of rule sets. And if it met those rule sets, then it would essentially complete the search. There were a tremendous number of benefits from it. We improved turnaround time service. We made quality a bit more consistent, which is another one. We were able to offset a lot of our labor costs. Instead of hiring an army of people, we were able to implement this solution and scale up the business pretty significantly. And that really, really transformed our business.
Last question. Yes. What is your go-to way to decompress after a high-stress day? Not that we have any of those in this industry at all.
Never, right?
Nothing ever happens.
For me, I love getting outdoors. If there's a hiking trail I can hit, I'd love to get out on the hiking trail and kind of reconnect with nature. Turn off the screens. Get out, experience the quiet and the birds chirping and the wind blowing. to me, that kind of resets my emotional state and recharges me.
You and me both. I'm right there with you on that.
Yeah.
Like, not just national parks, just being out. Like, I live maybe 10 minutes from the beach, just going over there, getting some sun on my face, hit the water on my feet. It's like, it does something to you chemically, you know, and it
Absolutely.
changes. And it's such a simple, getting back to the basics, right? So simple, and it really works.
Absolutely.
Any last comments, last thing that's on your mind that may not asked, anything that you want to throw in here?
I would just say I'm a big advocate of AI and what's to come. I'm excited for the future. I think there's a lot of benefits out there that, quite frankly, we haven't even tapped into yet. And I certainly understand maybe a bit of the skepticism and the caution around adopting a technology like this. But my recommendation is, start slowly. Just dip your feet in the water, start playing around with it, get yourself familiar with it. And I think once you start to see the benefits, I think you're going to want more of it. And so that's what my recommendation would be for anyone out there listening.
Keep an open mind, people.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah,
that's right.
Absolutely. And that's a wrap, you guys, on episode 3, where we explore AI and how it affects our daily lives. Big thanks to our guests for such huge insight, and of course, our listeners. Thank you for being such a big part of our journey. You can catch us every month wherever you listen to your podcast. So stay tuned, and I'll see you next time.